The Four Noble Truths are the foundational framework of Buddha-Dharma, articulating the essence of human suffering, its origins, its cessation, and the path to overcoming it. First taught by the Buddha in his inaugural discourse in the deer park at Sarnath, these truths offer a comprehensive method for transcending the inherent unsatisfactoriness of conditioned existence. They are central to Buddha-Dharma because they provide a practical guide that is universally applicable, detailing a path of ethical living, mental discipline, and wisdom that leads to liberation and enlightenment. This makes the Four Noble Truths not only foundational but essential for understanding and practicing Buddhist teachings. Light arose in me in things not heard before. Dhammacakka Sutta. Truth, Saka, is that which is. Its Sanskrit equivalent is Satya, which means an incontrovertible fact. According to Buddhism, there are four such truths pertaining to this so-called being. In the Rohitassa Sutta, the Buddha states, "In this very 1-fathom-long body, along with its perceptions and thoughts, do I proclaim the world, the origin of the world, the cessation of the world, and the path leading to the cessation of the world." In this particular context, the term world, loka, implies suffering. This interesting passage refers to the Four Noble Truths which the Buddha himself discovered by his own intuitive knowledge. Whether the Buddhas arise or not, these truths exist, and it is a Buddha that reveals them to the deluded world. They do not and cannot change with time because they are eternal truths. The Buddha was not indebted to anyone for his realization of them. He himself said, "They were unheard before." These truths are in Pali termed Aryasakkhani. They are so called because they were discovered by the greatest Arya, the Buddha, who was far removed from passion. The first noble truth deals with dukkha, which for need of a better English equivalent is rendered by suffering or sorrow. As a feeling, dukkha means that which is difficult to be endured, difficult, kha, to endure. As an abstract truth, dukkha is used in the sense of contemptible, and emptiness, ka. The world rests on suffering, hence it is contemptible. The world is devoid of any reality, hence it is empty or void. Dukkha, therefore, means contemptible void. Average men are only surface seers. An Arya sees things as they truly are. To an Arya, all life is suffering, and he finds no real happiness in this world which deceives mankind with illusory pleasures. Material happiness is merely the gratification of some desire. No sooner is the desired thing gained than it begins to be scorned. Insatiate are all desires. All are subject to birth, hati, and consequently to decay, jara, disease, vyadi, and finally to death, marana. No one is exempt from these four inevitable causes of suffering. Impeded wish is also suffering. We do not wish to be associated with things or persons we detest, nor do we wish to be separated from things or persons we love. Our cherished desires are not, however, always gratified. What we least expect or what we least desire is often thrust on us. At times, such unexpected, unpleasant circumstances become so intolerable and painful that weak, ignorant folk are compelled to commit suicide as if such an act would solve the problem. Real happiness is found within and is not to be defined in terms of wealth, power, honors, or conquests. If such worldly possessions are forcibly or unjustly obtained or are misdirected or even viewed with attachment, they will be a source of pain and sorrow for the possessors. Ordinarily, the enjoyment of sensual pleasures is the highest and only happiness to an average person. There is no doubt a momentary happiness in the anticipation, gratification, and recollection of such fleeting material pleasures, but they are illusory and temporary. According to the Buddha, non-attachment, viragata, or the transcending of material pleasures is a greater bliss. In brief, this composite body itself is a cause of suffering. This first truth of suffering, which depends on this so-called being and various aspects of life, is to be carefully analyzed and examined. This examination leads to a proper understanding of oneself as one really is. The cause of this suffering is craving, or attachment, tanha, which is the second noble truth. The Dhammapada v2:16 states, "From craving springs grief, from craving springs fear. For him who is wholly free from craving there is no grief, much less fear." This craving is a powerful mental force latent in all and is the chief cause of most of the ills of life. It is this craving, gross or subtle, that leads to repeated births in samsara and makes one cling to all forms of life. The grossest forms of craving are attenuated on attaining sakadagami, the second stage of sainthood, and are eradicated on attaining anagami, the third stage of sainthood. The subtle forms of craving are eradicated on attaining arahantship. Both suffering and craving can only be eradicated by following the middle way, enunciated by the Buddha himself, and attaining the supreme bliss of nibbana. The third noble truth is the complete cessation of suffering, which is nibbana, the ultimate goal of Buddhists. It is achieved by the total eradication of all forms of craving. This nibbana is to be comprehended by the mental eye by renouncing all internal attachment to the external world. This truth has to be realized by developing the Noble Eightfold Path, which is the fourth noble truth. This unique path is the only straight route that leads to nibbana. This truth presents a practical and structured approach to achieving enlightenment and liberation from the cycles of suffering and rebirth. It avoids the extreme of self-mortification that weakens one's intellect and the extreme of self-indulgence that retards one's moral progress. It consists of the following 8 factors. 1. Right view or right understanding, samaditthi. 2. Right thoughts, sammasankappa. 3. Right speech, samavaka. 4. Right action, sammakamanta. 5. Right livelihood, samma-ajiva. 6. Right effort, samma-vayama. 7. Right mindfulness, sammasati. 8. Right concentration, sammasamadhi. 1. Right view, right understanding is explained as the knowledge of the 4 noble truths. In other words, it is the understanding of oneself as one really is because, as the Rohitassa Sutta states, these truths are concerned with the 1 fathom long body of man. The keynote of Buddhism is this right understanding, understanding the 4 noble truths, the nature of suffering, and the reality of impermanence, suffering, and non-self. 2. Clear vision or right understanding leads to clear thinking. The second factor of the Noble Eightfold Path is, therefore, samma sankappa. The English renderings, right resolutions, right aspirations, do not convey the actual meaning of the Pali term. Right ideas or right mindfulness comes closer to the meaning. Right thoughts may be suggested as the nearest English equivalent. By sankappa is meant the vitakka mental state, which, for want of a better rendering, may be called initial application. This important mental state eliminates wrong ideas or notions and helps the other moral adjuncts to be diverted to nibbana. It is one's thoughts that either defile or purify a person. One's thoughts mold one's nature and control one's destiny. Evil thoughts tend to debase one, just as good thoughts tend to elevate one. Sometimes a single thought can either destroy or save a world. Samma sankappa serves the double purpose of eliminating evil thoughts and developing pure thoughts. Right thoughts in this particular connection are threefold. They consist of nekkhamma, renunciation of worldly pleasures or selflessness, which is opposed to attachment, selfishness, and self-possessiveness. Avyapada, loving kindness, goodwill, or benevolence, which is opposed to hatred, ill will, or aversion. And avihimsa, harmlessness or compassion, which is opposed to cruelty and callousness. These evil and good forces are latent in all. As long as we are worldlings, these evil forces rise to the surface at unexpected moments in disconcerting strength. When once they are totally eradicated on attaining arahantship, one stream of consciousness gets perfectly purified. Attachment and hatred coupled with ignorance are the chief causes of all evil prevalent in this deluded world. The enemy of the whole world is lust, through which all evils come to living beings. This lust, when obstructed by some cause, is transformed into wrath. One is either attached to desirable external objects or is repulsed with aversion in the case of undesirable objects. Through attachment, one clings to material pleasures and tries to gratify one's desire by some means or other. Through aversion, one recoils from undesirable objects and even goes to the extent of destroying them, as their very presence is a source of irritation. With the giving up of egoism by one's own intuitive insight, both attachment and hatred automatically disappear. The Dhammapada, verse 2 and 51 states, "There is no fire like lust, no grip like hate. There is no net like delusion, no river like craving." As one ascends the spiritual ladder, one renounces by degrees both gross and subtle attachment to material pleasures, like grown-up children giving up their petty toys. Being children, they cannot be expected to possess an adult's understanding, and they cannot be convinced of the worthlessness of their temporary pleasures. With maturity, they begin to understand things as they truly are, and they voluntarily give up their toys. As the spiritual pilgrim proceeds on the upward path by his constant meditation and reflection, he perceives the futility of pursuing base material pleasures and the resultant happiness in forsaking them. He cultivates non-attachment to the fullest degree. Happy is non-attachment in this world, so is the transcending of all sensual pleasures, is one of the early utterances of the Buddha. The other most rebellious passion is anger, aversion, ill will, or hatred, all of which are implied by the Pali term vyapada. It consumes the person in whom it springs and consumes others as well. The Pali term avyapada, literally non-enmity, corresponds to that most beautiful virtue, metta, in Sanskrit, maitri, which means loving kindness or goodwill towards all without any distinction. He whose mind is full of loving kindness can harbor no hatred towards any. Like a mother who makes no difference between herself and her only child and protects it even at the risk of her own life, even so does the spiritual pilgrim who follows this middle path radiate his thoughts of loving kindness, identifying himself with all. Buddhist metta embraces all living beings, animals not excluded. Avihimsa or karuna, harmlessness or compassion, is the third and the last member of Sankappa. Karuna is that sweet virtue which makes the tender hearts of the noble quiver at the sufferings of others. Like Buddhist metta, Buddhist karuna too is limitless. It is not restricted only to co-religionists or connationals or to human beings alone. Limited compassion is not true karuna. A compassionate one is as soft as a flower. He cannot bear the sufferings of others. He might at times even go to the extent of sacrificing his own life to alleviate the sufferings of others. In every Jataka story, it is evident that the Bodhisattva endeavored his best to help the distressed and the forlorn and to promote their happiness in every possible way. Karuna has the characteristics of a loving mother whose thoughts, words, and deeds always tend to relieve the distress of her sick child. It has the property of not being able to tolerate the sufferings of others. Its manifestation is perfect nonviolence and harmlessness. That is, a compassionate person appears to be absolutely nonviolent and harmless. The sight of the helpless states of the distressed is the proximate cause for the practice of karuna. The consummation of karuna is the eradication of all forms of cruelty. The direct enemy of karuna is cruelty, and the indirect enemy is homely grief. Buddhist metta appeals to both the rich and the poor, for Buddhism teaches its followers to elevate the lowly, help the poor, the needy, and the forlorn, tend the sick, comfort the bereaved, pity the wicked, and enlighten the ignorant. Compassion forms a fundamental principle of both Buddhist laymen and bhikkhus. Speaking of Buddhist harmlessness, Aldous Huxley writes, Indian pacifism finds its complete expression in the teaching of the Buddha. Buddhism teaches ahimsa, or harmlessness, towards all beings. It forbids even laymen to have anything to do with the manufacture and sale of arms, with the making of poison and intoxicants, with soldiering or the slaughtering of animals. The Buddha advises his disciples thus, Wherefore, O bhikkhus, however men may speak concerning you, whether in season or out of season, whether appropriately or inappropriately, whether courteously or rudely, whether wisely or foolishly, whether kindly or maliciously. Thus, O bhikkhus, must you train yourselves. Unsullied shall our minds remain, neither shall evil words escape our lips. Kind and compassionate, ever shall we abide with hearts, harboring no ill will. And we shall enfold those very persons with streams of loving thoughts unfailing, and forth from them, proceeding, we shall radiate the whole wide world with constant thoughts of loving kindness, ample, expanding, measureless, free from enmity, free from ill will. Thus must you train yourselves. He whose mind is free from selfish desires, hatred, and cruelty, and is saturated with the spirit of selflessness, loving kindness, and harmlessness, lives in perfect peace. He is indeed a blessing to himself and others. 3. Right thoughts lead to right speech, the third factor. It deals with refraining from falsehood, slandering, harsh words, and frivolous talk. He who tries to eradicate selfish desires cannot indulge in uttering falsehood or in slandering for any selfish end or purpose. He is truthful and trustworthy and ever seeks the good and beautiful in others instead of deceiving, defaming, denouncing, or disuniting his own fellow beings. A harmless mind that generates loving kindness cannot give vent to harsh speech which first debases the speaker and then hurts another. What he utters is not only true, sweet, and pleasant, but also useful, fruitful, and beneficial. 4. Right speech follows right action, which deals with abstinence from killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. These three evil deeds are caused by craving and anger, coupled with ignorance. With the gradual elimination of these causes from the mind of the spiritual pilgrim, blameworthy tendencies arising therefrom will find no expression. Under no pretense would he kill or steal. Being pure in mind, he would lead a pure life. 5. Purifying thoughts, words, and deeds. At the outset, the spiritual pilgrim tries to purify his livelihood, right livelihood, by refraining from the 5 kinds of trade which are forbidden to a lay disciple. They are trading in arms, Sattva-vanija, human beings, Sattva-vanija, flesh, Mamsa-vanija, i.e., breeding animals for slaughter, intoxicating drinks, Majja-vanija, and poison, Visa-vanija. Hypocritical conduct is cited as wrong livelihood for monks. Strictly speaking, from an Abhidhamma standpoint, by right speech, right action, and right livelihood are meant 3 abstinences, virati, but not the 3 opposite virtues. 6. Right effort is fourfold, namely, the endeavor to discard evil that has already arisen, The endeavor to prevent the arising of unarisen evil. The endeavor to develop unarisen good. The endeavor to promote the good which has already arisen. Right effort plays a very important part in the Noble Eightfold Path. It is by one's own effort that one's deliverance is obtained, and not by merely seeking refuge in others or by offering prayers. In man are found a rubbish heap of evil and a storehouse of virtue. By effort, one removes this rubbish heap and cultivates these latent virtues. 7. Right effort is closely associated with right mindfulness. It is the constant mindfulness with regard to body, kaya-nupassana, feelings, vedana-nupassana, thoughts, citta-nupassana, and mind objects, dhamma-nupassana. Mindfulness on these four objects tends to eradicate the misconceptions with regard to desirability, subha, so-called happiness, sukha, permanence, nikka, and an immortal soul, atta, respectively. 8. Right effort and right mindfulness lead to right concentration. It is the one-pointedness of the mind. A concentrated mind acts as a powerful aid to see things as they truly are by means of penetrative insight. The Noble Eightfold Path is a comprehensive path of practice that addresses all aspects of life: moral conduct, mental discipline, and wisdom. It is divided into three primary sections, each fostering specific aspects of development necessary for the cessation of suffering. Sila, moral conduct, includes right speech, right action, right livelihood. This aspect of the path involves ethical behavior and living in harmony with others, which provides a stable foundation for deeper meditation and wisdom. Samadhi, mental discipline, includes right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. This section of the path cultivates concentration and mindfulness, leading to mental clarity and calm. Panya, wisdom, includes right understanding, right thoughts. This final section of the path develops deep insight into the nature of reality, culminating in enlightenment. According to the order of development, Sila, Samadhi, and Panya are the three stages of the path. Strictly speaking, from an ultimate standpoint, these factors that comprise the Noble Eightfold Path signify 8 mental properties, cetasika, collectively found in the 4 classes of supramundane consciousness, lokuttara citta, whose object is nibbana. They are panyendriya, faculty of wisdom, vitaka, initial application, virati, 3 abstinences, viriya, energy, sati, mindfulness, and ekagata, one-pointedness, respectively. All these factors denote the mental attitude of the aspirant who is striving to gain his deliverance. In general, the Noble Eightfold Path is not meant to be followed in a linear fashion, but as a holistic practice where each aspect supports and enriches the others. By practicing these 8 aspects, one cultivates a balanced and thorough approach to overcoming the mental afflictions that cause suffering. The ultimate goal of following the Noble Eightfold Path is the attainment of nibbana, the state of ultimate peace, where all cravings, aversions, and delusions have ceased. Nibbana represents the cessation of all factors leading to suffering and rebirth. Thus, it is the end of samsara, the cycle of suffering. This path is universal and applicable to all, regardless of one's background or belief system. It offers a pragmatic approach to solving the problems of life by directly addressing the root causes of suffering. Thus, the Fourth Noble Truth not only diagnoses the problem of suffering but also prescribes a detailed regimen for its cure. This path is open to all who seek to understand their own suffering and strive towards liberation from suffering. Reflect on this path, for it holds the key to enlightenment and liberation. In summary, the Four Noble Truths stand at the very heart of the Buddha-Dharma. They encapsulate the essence of the Buddha's teachings and provide a foundational framework for understanding and overcoming suffering. Here is why these truths are central to the teachings. 1. The Four Noble Truths address the universal experience of suffering. Every being, regardless of background, status, or creed, encounters suffering in various forms throughout their life. By identifying suffering and its mechanisms, the Four Noble Truths speak directly to a fundamental aspect of the human condition, making them universally applicable and deeply resonant. 2. These truths offer a pragmatic approach to the problem of suffering. They do not merely describe suffering, but also outline a clear and methodical path to its cessation through the Noble Eightfold Path. This provides a practical guide for ethical conduct, mental discipline, and wisdom which can be applied by anyone seeking to alleviate suffering in their lives and attain a deeper peace. 3. The Four Noble Truths lay the groundwork for all other Buddhist teachings. They introduce key concepts such as impermanence, anicca, non-self, anatta, and the conditions that perpetuate the cycle of rebirth and suffering. Understanding these truths is essential for deeper studies into more complex doctrines and practices within Buddhism, such as dependent origination, the nature of consciousness, and the practices of insight and tranquility meditation. 4. The ultimate goal of the Buddha-Dharma is the attainment of nibbana, freedom from all attachments, delusions, and suffering. The Four Noble Truths directly address this goal by identifying the cause of suffering and detailing the path to its cessation. Thus, they are directly tied to the very purpose of the Buddha's path, liberation. 5. Collectively, the Four Noble Truths cover every aspect of Buddhist practice, from recognizing and understanding the problem, suffering, identifying its cause, craving and ignorance, realizing the possibility of cessation, and following the path that leads to it. This comprehensive coverage ensures that practitioners have a complete roadmap from the onset of their practice to the attainment of enlightenment. In these ways, the Four Noble Truths serve not only as the central teachings of Buddha-Dharma, but also as the essential starting point for anyone on the path to understanding and overcoming the inherent sufferings of life. Reflect upon these truths, for they illuminate the path to true peace and liberation. Thank you for watching. If you like it, do not forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, leave comments, and share with fellow truth seekers. Wishing you good health and inner peace every day.